And bend your right knee and put your right foot standing on the floor. And take a very simple movement of sliding a little bit your right hand downward in the direction of your right foot. Very small. And of course, sensing the movement of the right shoulder blade in this situation. And feel as you make that little movement of the sliding of your right hand downward toward the right foot. That doesn't mean do a bigger movement. It's just to indicate a direction. If you feel anything along the right side of your neck, right side of your chest, if you feel any change of pressure of the bottom of your right foot on the floor, and some of you I haven't given an indication of the facing of the palm, so some of you have your palm facing the ceiling and some of you have your palm downward, so touching the floor. So do it a few times with the palm downward. And feel if there's, as you do that, if there's any tendency at all for your head to move. And if the head wants to move, how does it want to move? Allow it to move. And feel, does it want to, does the head want to turn toward the hand? Does the head want to turn away from the hand? Does it turn? Does it slide? What tends to happen with your head? And then, just a few times, allow your head to turn to the right in such a way as if to see your right hand. So you bring the eyes in as well. And again, sensing the bottom of your right foot on the floor. And if there's any change of pressure of the right foot as you turn your head to the right. And what tends to happen with your breathing? Does the air tend to come in or out as you take your right hand downward? Or as you go back home? And then stop that a moment. Stop that a moment. And maybe just rest, actually. Put your legs down and rest. Feel your right arm, your right hand, your face. And then bend your right knee. Put your right foot standing. And take a very simple movement of pressing your Well, first of all, if you could bend the right knee so that your lower leg is, this is a whole other subject in itself, but have the right leg more or less vertical. So that means the heel not too far away from the buttocks, not too near. But this is also habits. And then we'll go into this more later today probably. But now press the right foot into the floor purposely and allow your right hip to come away from the floor. And as you do that movement, turn your pelvis, rotate it so that the weight goes. Now that's really fast. You're finished with the ATM. Now what are you going to do with yourself? You know the hare and the tortoise, right? You won the race, so just take it now. Just go out to lunch. All right, you're finished. Okay. So, all right, I picked on her. Now that's over. Okay, now, so I didn't say anything about sliding the arm down yet. That's step number 3. Okay. Lift your right hip. Well, I mean, you can feel they go together probably, but lift your right hip. Let your pelvis turn over to the left. Press the right foot into the floor. And keep your right knee vertical. So means don't tilt the right knee over to the side, but just keep it pretty vertical. Lift the hip. Turn your pelvis to the left. And why not begin to follow that movement up through your spine from the bottom up? Where in your spine do you feel it? Where in your ribs do you feel it? What does the breathing do? What do you do with your belly? Are you able to let your belly go a little bit, or you hold it, or what? And make the coming back home as aware as the going away from home in your spine, your pelvis, your ribs. And then you can feel, of course, if you like, the influence of that movement on your right shoulder blade, on your head, on your neck. And very, very gently, without any kind of ambition, bring the movement of the hand back in, just a little. Doesn't need to be, well, you make it the size you want, but just as long as you don't increase the effort from what you're doing now. A few times with the palm downward. Turn your head to the right for the moment. Follow the hand with the eyes. And find out if you can feel where does the movement from below connect to the, let's say, the movement from above. Sounds esoteric, but with some esoteric cosmic principles, so as above, so below, something like that. But at any rate, where does it connect? In other words, the press from the foot, lifting the hip, coming up through the spine, how far? The reaching of the right hand downward, also involving the spine, how far? And then looking for the place where, somewhere in the middle, where something is being connected, integrated, passing through, then, of course, it can just become one simple movement involving your entire self. Don't tilt the knee if you can help it. One simple movement involving your entire self. That's it. Then you feel as you do that, once you involve more of yourself like that, the head becomes passively turned. Means You don't need to do much in the neck to have it be moved, isn't it? All right, rest a little bit. And then maybe you would be interested in moving your left side a bit. So bend your left knee. Put your right leg down. And start a little movement of sliding the left hand down a little bit toward the left foot. And just taste the difference. Because we did the whole lesson this morning with the right hip and shoulder. Well, the right hip and the right shoulder and the left shoulder are they're quite different anyway. But now it's probably even a stronger difference. First of all, just how do you feel before? Don't worry about the left hip movement for the moment, just coming to the first movement we did, sliding the left hand down, and how do you feel the left shoulder blade? Then make it smaller and put something under your head so your head doesn't fall back. Maybe some people, if you don't need it, I don't think you need it. If the chin goes pretty far away from the chest and the head falls back, you can put something under the head a little bit. Although as we go on, maybe you'll take it out. So a little movement, sliding the left hand downward. The left knee is bent. And go delicately to take a moment to sense maybe can you find where the left shoulder blade connects to your left clavicle, the ribs on the left, what tends to happen as the left shoulder goes downward. Start filling in take time to carry over some of the knowledge that the right side of yourself has acquired this morning. And whether you breathe in or out as you do it, as you go down, if the air would come in or out, as you go up, back home, the air would come in or out. If there's any change of pressure of your left foot on the floor as you bring the hand downward, good. And put the legs down, put the leg down, rest a minute. And then bend your left knee. Feel if you could, what it would mean to have your left lower leg vertical. And then push your left foot into the floor. Allow your left hip joint to come away from the floor. Allow your pelvis to turn to the right. Just that movement. Don't worry about the reaching at the moment. Just allow yourself time to feel what this is. Keep the knee facing the ceiling if you can, so that the push from the foot generates a force which helps lift the hip joint, the pelvis turning so the weight goes more onto your right side. And what sort of turning and twisting do you feel lower down in yourself? In the lower ribs, in your lower spine. And little by little, the movement begins to pass through the different vertebrae of your spine. And think that each time you lift the hip like that, you find some other part of yourself participating in the movement. Keep adding new places to put your attention, to sense. This is just the beginning of it. If you want to join, please. We're not, and of this lesson, it's only step number 2 really, so you haven't missed much of this. It's a very simple lesson. You slide the hand and then you lift the hip. And coming up, and then go ahead when actually don't go ahead, just a few more times, finding new places, connecting this push of the foot into the floor with the movement through your spine, through your lower ribs. And do you think of exclusively the back parts of yourself? Do you think of the side, the left side, the right? And what about your chest? You see, the movement hasn't quite gotten that far, so many people don't think of the breast area. Is there any movement there in front? Around your sternum, is there any movement there? Hasn't quite gotten that far for some. Good. And put the leg down, pause a minute. Now bend your left knee, put your left foot standing. Make the movement a few times of sliding the left hand down toward the heel. Allow the eyes to follow. And put the two movements together. That's interesting that you needed permission for that, but okay. So put the two movements, because when we came back to the arm somehow, maybe it was my tone, very few people lifted the hip then. Okay, so see if you as you slide the hand down, if you allow the hip to lift, does it make it more comfortable for your left arm, your left shoulder? And try to integrate the upper and the lower. Try to make it one movement. And then go ahead and make the facing of the palm the other way, so you have your palm facing the ceiling. And you slide the hand like that. And what's the difference between those two movements? When you turn the palm over, does it get easier to slide the hand down, or easier where? What's the difference between doing it one way or the other? And of course, in order to know that, you have to play with it a little bit. Do it one way and do it the other. And just feel where do you use yourself differently if the palm is facing the ceiling or the palm is facing down. And do you prefer one or the other? Not holding your breath. Keep reducing the effort. Go slow. Good. And put the leg down. Stop a minute. Now, put your left arm long overhead, if you can, with the back of your hand on the floor. And then turn your right palm to face the ceiling. So both palms are facing the ceiling. Bend your right knee, put your right foot standing. And slide a few times your right hand in the direction of your right heel. Your left arm is overhead. Slide a few times your right hand toward your right heel. And feel with the left arm long like that, and the change of the orientation of the palm, how your head tends to move. If it's only turning, or if there's a little sliding, or maybe it doesn't want to go to the right at all now. So do it a few times with another head combination, which is that as you slide your right hand downward, you look upward toward the left arm, left hand, a few times. Use your hip, use your foot, use your entire self gently, without ambition. And keep the knee vertical, not tilting the knee into the left. Slowly, easily. So when you take that other pattern of movement, what tends to happen with your sternum? And when you think of your sternum, which part of your sternum where does your attention go in terms of the word sternum? Does it go to the top part where the sternum and the clavicles join? Does it go to the lower part? How long is your sternum? And how is it moving? Is it turning? Is it sliding? You can't answer these questions going fast. They will elude you, isn't it? Can you answer that question going fast? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe less. Is it turning? Is it sliding? Is it lifting? Is it a three-dimensional movement? Is it a two-dimensional movement? Looking at the left hand. The right hand going down, the left arm lengthening, actually. That's a new sentence, isn't it? Doesn't the left hand get a little longer as you do that and as you shorten the right hand? Right arm, right hand going downward, left arm lengthens a little bit. And then if you manage to get this upper part of yourself participating in the movement, maybe you can feel that it's not only that the head turns to see and the eyes turn to see the left hand, but the back of the head can actually slide a little bit on the floor. And again, if the chest is more involved, means using more of your whole self, can you feel that the movement of the head it almost does it by itself? In other words, say the head is moved more and more passively. You don't have to make big efforts with your neck muscles. Okay, and rest again. Where is your attention being absorbed into? The change in the breath, change in contact of yourself on the floor. Maybe we're giving the left shoulder to the left side a little chance to catch up now from all that work we did on the right side. So bend the left knee, put the left foot standing. And turn the palm, put the right arm long above your head, turn your palms toward the ceiling. Push your left foot into the floor, slide your left hand downward, your right arm hand upward a little bit. And make the movement, in the beginning, make the movement whatever size you want that allows you to collect, let's say, the ingredients of the movement, all the different components of the movement, when we say ingredients, components, and integrate them together into more of your whole self being involved. And have your head turn toward the right arm now, the right hand. And feel what has to happen in your, sorry, the left hand, my mistake. Have your head turn toward the, no, not my mistake, the right, maybe some people are using a different arm, that's what happened. You're throwing me off my game, yeah. Right arm overhead, left arm down. Lengthen your right arm. Look at your right hand and feel what sort of movement in your sternum, in your clavicles, both clavicles. Palms, both palms toward the ceiling now. And does it feel like one movement involving more and more of your entire self? Or does it still feel like pieces that you're trying to integrate together? What would you have to do to have it feel like one movement? Would you need to change the timing of it, or the size of it, or your breathing, or what could you do to make it feel like one unified movement? The right shoulder blade sliding one way, the right shoulder blade sliding one way, the left going downward, your spine, your chest, your ribs. Some people allow the belly to let go, some people don't allow the belly to let go. Some people include the eyes, some not. And rest again, put everything down and rest. Now, how are the two sides lying? And is the left side catching up a bit or waking up a bit? Your ability to sense your left shoulder blade more clearly, or your left hip. And then bend both knees. And alternate, one time reaching down with your right hand toward your right foot, palms toward the ceiling now. And one time reaching with your left hand toward your left foot. And you can observe if your right side is still more articulate than the left or not. What does that mean to be more articulate on one side? Well, just compare how you organize it in one way and the other. And if one way is easier, it means that in the direction that it's easier, palms toward the ceiling right now. If it's easier one way, then it means probably you use more of your whole self in that direction. So do a little bit of detective work and find out, what are you doing on the easy side that the other side could learn to do? Or another way you can do it is if one side you go much further than the other, just do the movement equally to both sides. So you give your nervous system the experience of equality. And what are you doing with the head now? Some people turn the head, some people take the head toward the hand, away from the hand. There's a few different possibilities. Yeah, that's it. Now see, every time, whatever the experiment is, the moment it becomes your experiment, what you're interested in now, in this moment, in your sensing, in your thinking, in your feeling, in your acting, then it becomes also, of course, your learning. So now it's your learning. You can stop when you want, you can rest when you want, you can do smaller. Good. And rest. And listen to your two shoulders, the back of your pelvis, your spine. Back of your head on the floor. And now bend your right knee only, put your right foot standing on the floor. Take your palm toward the ceiling. And find out if you could, without strain, would it be possible to have your right hand be underneath your right heel? How would you go about that? What's your strategy for that? And I purposely left that a little bit open for a few seconds just to see that, okay, so we have we have two fundamental different interpretations or approaches to that instruction. So some people just take that in order for the right hand to be underneath the right heel, you have to somehow find a way to contort yourself enough that the fingers could touch the heel and go under. And other people, not that many actually, right away had the idea that they could also bring the heel to be on top of the hand, right? Does that make sense? That sentence that I just said? So what if, in order to have your fingers of your right hand underneath the heel, you also allow your foot to move, your leg to move? Is that a little bit, would that be more in the direction of not killing yourself right away today, or? Is that killing yourself a little bit less than what? I mean, nobody killed themselves, but you were trying to figure out how to kind of pull your arm off there a bit. Okay, so your heel is on top of your hand is underneath your heel. Stay like that. Do anything you need to do with your head, with your ribs, with your sternum. with your entire self so that you're a bit like a banana, aren't you? Isn't it? If the top of the banana was the top of your head and the bottom of the banana was your tail, in other words, it's quite a curve, isn't it? Isn't your spine quite curved in this position? And now, in this position, and have your thumb together with your other fingers underneath the heel. And in this position, do a simple movement of lifting the heel a few times and putting it back down. Leave the hand flat. Just lift the heel and put it back down. And lift the heel and put it back down. And when you lift the heel like that, what do you feel in your hip joint? Can you feel something happening in the relation of the leg to the hip joint? Does the hip joint go backward or forward when you lift the heel? And then let that go. Come back, leave the knee bent, but come back home. Leave the knee bent, but come back home. Do a few times the movement of reaching the hand toward the heel. Lift the hip as you do it. Feel just even those few little movements of lifting the heel and putting previous variation. Just we didn't do so many of them, but how did that affect how you use your pelvis now, how you use your hip joint now? Or your lower spine. And then hold the foot again and do a movement of lifting just the toes and putting them back down. So it means you do something in the front of your ankle joint. Heel rocks back toward the floor. And is it possible for you to feel this in your hip joint? What does the hip joint do? Does it go backward or forward? Or maybe you feel something in the back of the pelvis on the right side. And let go of the foot. Come back home. And a few times sliding the hand toward the foot. And back. Palm toward the ceiling. Left arm not long for the moment. The left arm's just down along your side now for this. I mean, there's reasons you might want to have the other arm long, but just for these variations, both arms are down along your side. And again, feel the influence of these little variations on the way that your hip joint mobilizes itself, your pelvis. Is something a little bit more clear for you in terms of the relationship between the push of the foot into the floor and the rest of the movement? Or how the lower part connects to the upper part? Okay, and stop and rest. Change over the sides, bend your left knee. Bring your left palm underneath the heel. And a few times, make the lifting of the left heel and down so that the toes of your left foot press more into the floor. And feel what happens in your hip joint as you do that. Where does your knee go in space? Think of the front of the hip joint, the back. What you feel in your left shoulder blade as you do that. Or the middle of your spine. Let go of the foot and do a few times the movement of the hand toward the heel and back home. Say the thematic movement, the movement we started with, palm toward the ceiling. Feel when the air comes in or out. And if your hip joint feels a bit more nimble, or if the idea of keeping the knee vertical is maybe a little bit more possible, so when you in this thematic movement, you don't lift the heel. When you slide the hand down toward the heel, the whole foot presses into the floor. Yeah. I was speaking to one person. Then go ahead and hold underneath again and lift just the toes and down. The other movement where you feel the bending in the front of your ankle. When you lift the toes, what's the action? How does it, what do you feel in the back of your pelvis? And can you feel the movement in the hip joint in a particular direction? Can you feel when the air comes in or out? Maybe just a few times alternate. You can rest, you can come out of the position if it's a strain and come back into it. Self-regulate your way through as you've learned. But just a few times to give you a chance to be able to sense what's happening. Where is your hip joint and what's happening there? In one of the movements, the hip joint goes backward toward the floor, and in the other one goes a little away. Can you feel that? And which of those two movements feels more like your tendency, or is it equal? Some people, and it's also different on both sides. Well, a lot to study there. But we won't do it all in one go. Now, let that go and just come back to sliding your left hand down toward your foot, the very first movement. But feeling, well, actually, it's, I don't know, if it's maybe the second movement where we slid the hand down, but lifted the hip on that side at the same time. Feel if the left hip joint is more willing to participate in the movement, the left side of the pelvis a little clearer, or what? Anything easier, clearer, or the contact of the foot into the floor clearer. And bend the other knee. I'm rushing us just a little bit because I think you're there's really a good quality of attention. I feel people are engaging. And then there's this little bird flying overhead saying, let's go to lunch, let's go to lunch. So I'm rushing a little bit now. But I mean, you could spend a long time on all of this. So bend both knees, and with both palms facing the ceiling, just come back. Maybe we'll end this morning with giving you one more chance to play with the difference between the two sides of reaching and making them more similar. Where, come back to your experiment. Is it in your hip joint? Is it the way you push one foot into the floor or the other? What do you do differently, and what could you do more similarly? But don't lift the heel. The whole foot pushes into the floor on one side, that's it, and then into the floor on the other side. And we have about 8 different ways of using the head right now. It's quite interesting. And even some ways of not using the head at all. So allow the head. Off with your head. Okay, so on with your head. I don't care what you do, but allow it to move. It's not, I don't want, and first, I mean, yes, it would be fun to look, but it's the first day. I want you to have a modicum of privacy. All right, let's stop. Modicum. Put everything down and rest. Feel your two sides, your middle of yourself, your whole self. Bring yourself up to sitting. Stand up. Walk around. So just walk and sense yourself, and I'm going to talk to you for a few sentences, but just walk and feel the influence of the lesson. Now, I told you I've taught before, and I've taught in these trainings, and I find that, and this one, now, if you know where you live in Melbourne, but you go to Sydney, and then you live in Sydney, but you go to Melbourne, and then you're in Adelaide, and you go nowhere, and then you have one day with an hour and 10 minutes for lunch, and the next day it's an hour and a half, and the next day it's 3 minutes. I mean, it's just crazy. It's all very crazy. So, for me, I'd rather use complexity in other ways. So, what we're going to do this week anyway is our lunch will be an hour and 15 minutes, and it's going to be like that every day. And then at the end of the week, and then I might get in trouble for changing the structure, but I know how to take care of myself. So we're going to do that this week, and then next week we'll worry about next week, okay? Hour and 15 minutes, come back, and we'll carry on. Good. Is that a good amount of time for you for lunch anyway? Okay. And that way we can, after today, we'll be giving FIs every day at lunch. And so I can't do that with an hour lunch break. So